The silence before the storm, the night started like any other in the glossy world of late-night television. Bright studio lights, laughter pre-recorded in sharp loops, eager clapping from a warmed-up audience, the usual rhythm of fame and entertainment. And somewhere in that tightly choreographed machine, Keanu Reeves waited backstage with a quiet stillness that contrasted the chaos around him. He wasn't nervous. Keanu didn't get nervous anymore. Not about these things. He had done hundreds of interviews before, answered the same questions over and over with that soft, calm voice. But tonight felt different, not because of the stage or the cameras, not because of Jimmy Kimmel, but because of what had happened earlier that morning. That morning, Keanu had visited a children's hospital in downtown Los Angeles. It wasn't for publicity. He wore a hoodie, no entourage, and stayed there for hours, talking to kids with leukemia, playing Lego with a boy named Raphael, and sitting beside a little girl named Emmy who hadn't spoken in 3 days, until she looked at Keanu's face and whispered, "You look like my daddy." Her mother broke down crying right there, and Keanu just held her hand. He promised Emmy he would visit again soon. She smiled. Barely. But she smiled. But none of that was planned, and that was the problem. His agent had called him frantically afterward. "Keanu, please. The Kimmel producers are nervous. They had a segment planned, props, punchlines. You can't just go silent on social media and skip pre-show meetings. They're not happy." He had apologized, but not with regret. "I just had to be there," he had said quietly. So now, as the backstage assistant gave him a 5-minute warning, Keanu felt the weight of 2 worlds pressing against each other. One world where cameras waited for jokes, and another where a child's eyes still lingered in his mind. He walked out as the stage curtain opened. The applause erupted. He smiled faintly, waved, and shook hands with Jimmy. But even as he sat down, he could feel it. Something was off. Jimmy's smile was wider than usual. Too polished. Too rehearsed. "Keanu Reeves, everybody, Jimmy," began with a chuckle. "The man, the myth, the apparently real-life superhero. Word is you skipped your production briefing today to visit a hospital?" Keanu nodded slowly. "Yeah, I met some amazing kids." "You mean you ghosted us?" Jimmy interrupted with a laugh that wasn't fully joking. "We had a John Wick surprise segment planned. Props, stunts, a bit with the dog. You know, entertainment stuff." There was polite laughter from the audience. Keanu glanced around, then back at Jimmy. "Sometimes real life is more important than pretending." The laughter stopped. A strange silence swept over the crowd like a gust of cold air. Jimmy's face tightened slightly. He leaned forward. "I get that, but we do a show here. People want to see you talk about your movie, not your personal charity field trips." Keanu's jaw clenched, but he didn't raise his voice. He had faced loss, loneliness, the glare of relentless media. He wasn't going to lose himself over a few sharp words. "I wasn't trying to promote anything," he said calmly. "I was just trying to be human." Again, silence. No cue cards could save the moment. The producer backstage signaled frantically, trying to cut to commercial. But Jimmy leaned into the tension instead. "You know, Keanu," Jimmy said, his tone turning harder, "a lot of celebrities do charity. They just know how to balance it. They show up here, play along. It's called professionalism." Keanu looked at Jimmy, eyes filled not with anger, but with quiet sadness. "And what do you call showing up for a sick child who might not make it through the week?" The studio fell completely still. No one laughed, not a single clap. The tension was electric, cracking through the glossy walls of late-night routine. Jimmy blinked, his smirk faltering. The producer finally cut the feed. Cameras dropped to black. Commercials rolled. And just like that, Keanu was told he could leave. No handshake, no farewell, no closing applause. As he walked out of the studio into the cool night air, he felt something strange. Not anger, not regret, but a kind of lonely peace. He had said what he needed to say. And for the first time in a long while, he didn't. care who approved. But what he didn't know was that someone had recorded the entire confrontation on their phone. A backstage intern, nervous, unnoticed, but watching. And they had just uploaded the uncut footage to social media. By the time Keanu got home, it had already hit 3 million views. When silence breaks the world. Keanu didn't check his phone that night. He made a pot of tea, lit a candle, and sat quietly by the window of his small Los Angeles home. The city shimmered in the distance, unaware of the digital storm that was already brewing. To him, it had been a strange, painful night, but one he had already accepted. He had told the truth, even if it cost him something. But by the time the sun rose, the world had changed. Outside his door, 3 news vans idled silently. Neighbors watched from their porches, not with curiosity, but awe. They had seen something unusual on their screens. Not an actor playing a role, but a man standing in truth on national television, refusing to be packaged into a performance. The video uploaded by the intern had gone beyond viral. It had shattered the internet. Hashtags like Keanu Ruth, Stand with Keanu, and A Real Hero began trending within hours. Fans reposted the footage across every platform. One clip showed the exact moment Keanu asked, "And what do you call showing up for a sick child who might not make it through the week?" It was raw, honest, and it had cut through the plastic smiles of the entertainment world like a blade. People didn't just watch. They felt it. Celebrities started sharing the clip. Some were supportive, saying Keanu reminded them of why they got into the industry. Others hesitated, nervous about going against a major platform like Jimmy Kimmel's show. And a few, hidden behind polished statements, whispered that Keanu had gone too far, that he had disrespected the format. Keanu's team was panicking. His publicist left 12 voicemails. His agent called nonstop. Sponsors were unsure. Appearances were being canceled. There were rumors that Jimmy's producers were trying to suppress the clip through copyright strikes, but it was already too late. People were saving it, stitching it, spreading it like wildfire. Keanu finally opened his phone. Thousands of unread messages, emails from strangers. Some were from mothers of sick children. Others were from nurses, soldiers, or just quiet people who had never written a message like this before. One message stood out. It was from a nurse named Alma at the children's hospital. Emmy asked if you were okay. She saw the video. She smiled. Again. She said, "He didn't lie. He really meant it. I thought you should know." Keanu leaned back in his chair. His eyes stung. He remembered Emmy's tiny hand in his. Remembered the way she looked at him, not like he was famous, but like he was safe. And he knew at that moment that even if the world turned on him, he wouldn't regret a second of it. But not everyone was smiling. A private message arrived later that night. It was from Jimmy himself. It wasn't long. Just 3 lines. "You embarrassed me on my own show. You could have talked to me backstage. This won't just blow over." Keanu stared at the screen, not with fear, but with a heavy understanding. Sometimes telling the truth doesn't make you a hero. It makes you a target. He didn't reply. He closed the phone. And for the rest of the night, he sat in silence again. Not because he was afraid, but because he was preparing. He knew this. Wasn't just a moment. It was a reckoning. And the next morning, something even more unexpected happened. A former talk show host, a man known for his brutal honesty, tweeted something that made headlines across every media outlet. "I've known Kimmel for years. What he did to Keanu, that wasn't a joke gone wrong. That was ego. And ego doesn't like kindness that can't be controlled." Hollywood was splitting. Agents whispered behind closed doors. Producers debated canceling interviews. And somewhere in a hospital room, little Emmy held up a paper drawing she made of Keanu, wearing a cape, sitting beside her with a soft smile. Meanwhile, Keanu received an invitation. Not from a show, Not from a studio, but from a single mother in Chicago whose son had just entered hospice care. She wrote, "He doesn't watch TV, but he saw you." Not the actor, the man. And he smiled for the first time in weeks. He asked if you'd visit. "I don't know what to hope for. I just wanted you to know you matter." Keanu read the message 3 times. Then he packed a bag. And as his car pulled away from the city lights, he had no idea what kind of storm was about to hit him next, because someone else had seen the video, and they had a very different plan for him. The ghost with a golden smile. The plane touched down in Chicago beneath a sky that looked like it had forgotten how to shine. Gray clouds hung heavy, and a slow drizzle smeared the airport windows as Keanu stepped onto the tarmac with a small backpack slung over one shoulder. He wasn't here for a red carpet. No press, no cameras, just a promise to a dying boy and his mother. As the car weaved through quiet suburbs, he thought about the letter again. About a child who had watched a single clip and saw not a broken man, not a fallen star, but someone worth believing in, and somehow that mattered more to Keanu than every award he had ever received. When he arrived at the house, it was smaller than he expected. Faded paint, cracked steps. But the moment the front door opened and the mother appeared with tired eyes and a trembling smile, everything else faded. She didn't say much, just a quiet "thank you" as her voice broke. She led him down a narrow hallway where a boy named Noah lay curled beneath thin blankets. Noah was 9. He had leukemia, and his world had shrunk to 4 walls and a stuffed dog missing one eye. "Hi," Keanu said gently. Noah blinked, his face pale, his lips cracked. "You're the man who made Jimmy mad." Keanu chuckled, crouching down. "Yeah, guess I didn't read the script right." "Good," Noah whispered. "Scripts are boring." They talked, not about Hollywood, not about heroes, but about space. Noah loved space. He believed one day, if his body was too broken for this world, his soul might float up into the stars and become a moon. "Not a big one," he said, "just a little moon. Something quiet." And Keanu listened. Really listened. For 2 hours. But as he sat there, sharing space with a boy who had more courage in his small frame than most grown men, his phone buzzed with a flood of missed calls. Something was happening. Something big. He stepped outside to check. A message from his agent. "Keanu, urgent. Call me. It's her." A coldness slid down his spine. He hadn't heard that name in 15 years. Her. Melina Vargas. She had been the most brilliant producer in his early days. Tough. Fearless. She'd built stars from nothing. Turned unknowns into household names. And she had once believed in him more than anyone. But after a terrible fallout, one that left both their careers scorched in places no one saw, she vanished from his life. Some said she retired. Others claimed she moved overseas, but now she was back, and she was watching. The next message came with a video link. Keanu tapped it. It was Melina. Silver-haired now, but her voice still cut like a knife. "I saw what happened on Kimmel's stage. It wasn't just TV. It was truth. And Hollywood's not ready for that. But maybe it's time we stop asking for permission." She paused. "Keanu, I want to make something real. A documentary. No filters. No agents. Just you. Your truth. The world needs to see what kindness actually looks like when it's not packaged and sold. Think about it. I've already secured a team, and the network's scared, but curious." Keanu didn't answer. Not right away. He watched the rain fall on the sidewalk. He looked at the house behind him, and he thought about Noah. About that quiet little moon floating through space. He had spent years avoiding the spotlight in its rawest form. Now someone wanted to turn his real life into a mirror for the world. He walked back inside. Noah was asleep. His hand rested on Keanu's drawing, a small sketch of 2 figures, floating between stars. One of them looked like him. The other had no hair, but the biggest smile in the galaxy. Keanu sat down again and whispered, "Okay, Melina." But what he didn't know was that not everyone wanted the truth exposed. Because back in Los Angeles, inside a boardroom with locked doors, another meeting was happening. Executives were watching the same viral footage, analyzing comments, tracking shares. Their faces were tense. "He's gone off script," one of them said coldly. "And now she's involved." Another leaned forward, eyes narrowed. "Then it's time to remind him who really owns the stage. The machine behind the curtain." The next morning, Keanu sat by a hospital bed, holding Noah's hand as the boy slept peacefully beneath the soft rhythm of the monitor. His breath came slower now, but there was a strange comfort in the room. Not fear, not pain, just peace. Like Noah had already made peace with the stars he talked about. Outside, the world was changing again, but not the way it had a few days ago. This time, it wasn't social media or fans or children writing letters. It was cold boardrooms, dark suits, voices that didn't tremble when they said things like control, narrative, and containment. The studio Keanu had worked with for nearly 2 decades had just launched a quiet campaign. They called it damage control. To the public, they said nothing, no statements, no press releases. But behind the scenes, emails were flying, calls were being made, and meetings were being scheduled, all centered around one man who, by simply refusing to play along, had become something unpredictable. Keanu Reeves had become inconvenient. Not because he lied, not because he failed, but because he told the truth too quietly and too clearly for them to reshape. It started small. One late-night producer leaked a story to a tabloid, something vague. Sources close to Reeves suggest he's unstable, possibly dealing with burnout. It was a whisper, but whispers in Hollywood have teeth. Then came the rumors. He walked off set. He's difficult to work with. He's refusing to do press. None of it was true. But that didn't matter. Truth was soft and money shouted. Keanu's phone kept buzzing. Journalists asking for quotes. Bloggers offering sympathy. Actors sending mixed messages, some of support, others simply trying to avoid being seen too close to him in public. He ignored most of it. But when Melina called again, her voice had changed. It was tighter now, with an edge that wasn't there before. "They're trying to bury you," she said, "but they're not coming at you directly. They'll discredit you first. Then they'll cut ties. If we're going to do this documentary, we need to start now. No more waiting." Keanu didn't answer right away. He looked out the hospital, window at a world rushing by in cars and shadows. Noah's mother came in quietly and sat beside her son, gently brushing hair from his face. She didn't say a word. She didn't need to. Everything real in the world was already in that room. He turned back to the phone. "If we do this," he said finally, "we don't do it to fight them. We do it to remind people there's still something worth believing in." Melina sighed, then laughed softly. "Only you would say that in the middle of a war." But she agreed. The next day, her team flew to Chicago. Small crew, quiet setup, no logos, no studio interference, just lenses and questions. And the first interview wasn't with Keanu. It was with Noah's mother. She told them everything. Not about Keanu's fame, but about how he had sat in that chair every day for the past 4 days, reading stories, bringing paper stars, whispering to a boy who barely had the strength to whisper back. When the camera turned to Keanu, he didn't read from notes. He didn't try to explain. He just said, "I'm not here to be right. I'm here to be honest. And if that's not enough, then we've all forgotten why stories matter." But as the crew packed up that night, something strange happened. An unmarked black car pulled up across the street from the house. It didn't park. It didn't drive off. It just idled there, windows tinted too dark to see through. Melina noticed first. She watched it from the kitchen window and frowned. "We didn't tell anyone the location," she said. Keanu walked over, looked, then nodded. "They know." A chill passed through the room. Not fear, exactly, but a realization. They were no longer just telling a story. They were exposing something. And somewhere, in a room filled with men who had never stepped foot in a children's hospital, someone was making a call. "You warned." "Him," a voice said over speakerphone. "Now it's time to make an example." When truth begins to bleed. 3 days later, Keanu Reeves sat alone in a hotel room that felt colder than any winter he had ever known. Not because of the temperature, the heater hummed softly, but because of what had started to unravel outside those 4 walls. For every kind word posted online, there were now 5 headlines spinning a darker version of his truth. It was no longer about a moment on live television or a dying boy who loved stars. It had become a battle for perception, a war between heart and machine. The smear campaign had grown teeth overnight. Anonymous insider sources claimed Keanu had become erratic on set. Others accused him of manipulating public emotion to revive a fading career. Some articles hinted at past disagreements, twisting old stories into half-truths. A few even suggested he was trying to damage the industry out of spite. The language was careful, clean, legally safe. But the message was poison. His team tried to shield him. Melina fought back, releasing a short teaser of the documentary. It showed Keanu with Noah, a moment where he held up a hand-drawn star and told, "The boy, you are already more than most people dream to be." It was meant to recenter the conversation, to pull people back to what really mattered. But Hollywood is quick to forget warmth when scandal sells faster. Sponsors pulled out of deals. A film he had finished months ago quietly removed his name from the press tour. Invitations vanished. People stopped replying, and even those who supported him silently, backstage, through whispers. No one wanted to be the next target. Keanu didn't cry, but something deeper broke that week. He sat by Noah again that evening. The boy had grown weaker, his voice barely a breeze. Yet, when he saw Keanu, his lips curved slightly. "You're still here," he whispered. "Of course I am," Keanu replied. "Even when they say bad things about you." Keanu's voice cracked. "Those things don't matter to me, Noah. You do." The boy stared at him, eyes glassy and slow. "Promise me you won't disappear, like the stars do in the morning." Keanu nodded, gripping the boy's hand gently. "I promise." But that night, when Noah finally fell asleep, Keanu stepped outside. The sky above Chicago was cloudy, no stars in sight. He leaned against the wall and finally allowed his body to tremble. Not with anger, not even with grief. Just exhaustion. Deep, bone-heavy exhaustion, from being misunderstood, from standing alone, from carrying something good that the world kept trying to tear down. He whispered to himself, "What if I'm not strong enough for this?" Behind him, Melina stepped out of the doorway. She didn't say anything right away, just stood there, holding a phone in her hand. After a moment, she said, "You need to see this." She handed it to him. The screen played a video. A nurse from the Children's Hospital in Los Angeles. Speaking into the camera, her voice raw, eyes red. "I was there when Keanu Reeves sat for 6 hours with a girl named Emmy. He didn't post about it, didn't call the media. He just showed up and stayed. I've seen parents walk away. I've seen actors visit for 10 minutes. But he stayed, even after the cameras were off." The nurse paused. "You can try to erase him from your headlines, but you can't erase what he did for those kids." Keanu watched the video silently. Melina continued. "She wasn't the only one. Others are speaking now. Parents, doctors, volunteers. They're tired of the noise. They're tired of the lies. They're telling the real story. Keanu looked at her, weary but awake. Why now? She gave a faint smile. Because the machine may control the spotlight, but it doesn't own people's hearts. And then the door opened behind them. Noah's mother stood there, her face pale, voice shaking. He's asking for you. Keanu rushed inside. Noah lay there, his little hand reaching out, his eyes half closed but his lips moving. Keanu leaned close, trying to catch the words. Thank you, Noah breathed, for staying human. And with that, Noah let go. Not in fear, not in pain, but in peace. A tear slipped down Keanu's face. He didn't speak. He just sat there, holding the boy's hand, watching the quiet rise of the monitor slow, and then fall silent. For the first time in weeks, there was no noise, no rumors, no voices, just truth, still and heartbreaking. Outside the hospital window, the clouds parted, and in the dark sky above Chicago, one small star blinked through. Melina watched from the hallway. We release the full documentary tomorrow, she whispered to herself. Let the world decide who he really is. The star they couldn't dim the day the documentary dropped. The world didn't just watch. It paused. There was no marketing campaign, no primetime commercials, just a simple title posted on Melina's channel. The Man They Tried to Silence. Keanu's real story. Within 1 hour, it had crossed 1 million views. Not because of drama or scandal, but because people had been quietly waiting for something real, something unscripted, something true. And what they saw wasn't a polished narrative or a studio-approved version of Keanu Reeves. They saw him kneeling beside hospital beds, laughing softly with terminal children, crying behind a door after Emmy whispered, "I love you," before falling asleep. They saw him helping a janitor clean up a spilled tray in silence. They heard nurses, parents, and strangers speak, not about a movie star, but about a man who had chosen to be kind in rooms where no one was watching. For the first half hour, people were quiet, but by the end of the film, the internet exploded, not with outrage this time, but with reverence. Hashtags returned, stronger than before. Threads were filled with stories of fans who had once met Keanu in random corners of life, in cafes, on subways, at gas stations, and shared how he had always treated them with simple, radical kindness. Even celebrities who had stayed silent began to speak, not just to defend him, but to ask themselves why it had taken them so long. Some admitted they had been afraid. Others admitted they had forgotten what real courage looked like. But not everyone reacted with grace. Jimmy Kimmel's team released a vague apology. We regret the discomfort caused during the segment. But it was too late. People had seen behind the curtain, and the public wasn't looking for scripted regret. They wanted sincerity. They wanted substance. Keanu didn't post a response. He didn't schedule interviews. He didn't celebrate. He flew back to Los Angeles quietly, carrying a folded piece of paper in his jacket, a drawing Noah had made on his last day. It showed 2 moons floating close together, one smaller, one taller, and written in a child's careful letters were the words, "Thank you for seeing me." He pinned it to the inside of his home studio wall. Didn't frame it, didn't share it. He just kept it close, a reminder that no award, no applause, could ever compare to being someone a child trusted in their final days. Weeks passed. Life moved on. Hollywood, as always, adapted. The noise faded. The lies thinned. The spotlight turned toward newer stories. But something subtle had shifted. A major talk show host, in a rare move, reached out privately. Not Jimmy. Someone else. Older. Quieter. He asked Keanu to come on air. No scripts, no rehearsed jokes, just a conversation. Keanu politely declined, not out of pride, but out of peace. He no longer needed to explain who he was. And yet, the world hadn't forgotten. Donations to children's hospitals surged. Schools began showing the documentary in classrooms during ethics lessons. Artists painted murals of Keanu and Noah under starlit skies. Even a children's book was written, The Man Who Listened, and became a bestseller. On the first anniversary of Noah's passing, Keanu returned to Chicago, not with cameras, not with Melina's crew, just himself. He sat with Noah's mother in their backyard, beneath a sky much clearer than the one from a year ago. They spoke little, shared tea, remembered laughter. Before leaving, Keanu took a small stone from his pocket, one he had kept since the funeral, and placed it beneath the oak tree in their yard. He whispered, "You're still seen." Then he walked back to the car, Melina. Met him a few weeks later in Los Angeles. The documentary had been nominated for several major awards. Streaming platforms were fighting for the rights. Publishers were calling. But she only had one question for him. "Do you want to tell more stories?" Keanu looked at her, then out the window where a young man was helping an old woman cross the street. He smiled. "Only if they're real." Melina nodded. "Then we'll keep the cameras off and just follow the truth." As she turned to leave, Keanu stayed by the window, not because he needed to be seen, but because sometimes the quietest people leave behind the loudest echoes. And though the machine had tried to erase him, the world had already chosen. Not the actor, not the legend, but the man. And in every corner of that world, where kindness still fought to breathe, people would now remember the simple story of a boy, a promise, and the man who refused to disappear like a star at dawn.